Okay, I'm going to share the screen, guys. Give me 1 second. Now, obviously, Arthur's been working 3-day medical shifts and other things, so I'm sure you're all exhausted. I think the main thing is that this just percolates as an idea, and then you might not get it the first time, because in truth, even I had to go through it more than once. So, um, Lance, would you like to read the Mishnah? Lance?
Lance,
Yeah,
you're on mute.
I want to unmute first. If 2 witnesses said, we testify about this man, that he owes his fellow 200 zuz, and they were found to be zomimim, they receive lashes for their false testimony, and they pay the victim the amount they intended to make him lose. With the scriptural verse that makes him liable to lashes is not the one that makes him liable to payment. The biblical verse that mandates the penalty of lashes for false testimony is not the same as the one which dictates the reciprocal punishment of zomamin, witnesses. Since the 2 penalties derive from 2 different verses, both must be carried out. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. But the sages say whoever pays does not receive lashes. The person cannot be liable to both lashes and monetary payment for violating the same prohibition, as will be explained in the Gemara. Carry on?
Absolutely.
If they said, we testify about this man that he is liable to 40 lashes for transgressing any kind of biblical prohibitions that are subject to this punishment, and were found to be zomimin, they receive 80 lashes. They each receive 2 sets of 40 lashes. 1 set for violating the prohibition, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and the second for the biblical directive, and you shall do to him as you plan to do to his brother, i.e. the general Hasama penalty. These are the words of Rabbi Meir, but the sages say they receive only 40 lashes as their Hatzamah punishment, but nothing for transgressing the prohibition against false testimony.
Perfect. Okay. So what are we talking about here? Sometimes there are people that join the shir that the Aramaic Hebrew is not that good, including myself. So what Adim Zomimim are conspiring witnesses. And what the Hazama is the reciprocal penalty they intended to do to their victim. And Adim Zomimim occur when, after the verdict was given, a second set of witnesses have turned around and said, you couldn't have been there to witness the apparent transgression or crime because you were with us in a different location. And therefore the integrity is called into question. When it is a case of witnesses that are lying, you might say the integrity is called into question. However, it's not premeditated vindictiveness against the victim. It merely could be that one of them is in a compromising situation. Like we said, for example, he could be having an affair with his secretary, and him saying that he saw a particular crime at a certain time at a certain place might make him a little bit vulnerable to divorce and losing half his assets. So contradiction of testimony, where you've got a first set of witnesses and a second set, the two cancel each other out, and the matter is thrown out of court, well, just simply because there's a contradiction within the testimony. Here, there has nothing to do with the testimony. It's just proving that the first set of witnesses were not at that location, and the second set of witnesses are believed. This is brought down as a tradition from Sana, and therefore they get this reciprocal penalty of what they intended to the victim, because they said they were there witnessing the crime when in fact they weren't in that location. Now, there are 2 different transgressions that occur. Both the sages and Rabbi Meir agree. They just have a slightly different way of dealing with the punishment. But the two transgressions that actually do occur is the ninth commandment, thou shalt not bear false testimony against one's neighbor. And that's not the same as the punishment for conspiring witnesses, which is the reciprocal punishment. In other words, if they intended to cost their victim money, then so too they shall be charged money. So if you look at the first case in the Mishnah, the first thing that you've got to realize is that with Adim Zomimim, if we are not able to apply a reciprocal punishment, for whatever reason, as we stated, for example, that a Cohen that accuses another Cohen of not really being a Cohen because his father was suspected of marrying a divorcee, etc., when it's proved that he's a conspiring witness, the reason why his Kohanic status is not stripped is it would affect his children and they've done nothing wrong, even though their father's a despicable conspiring witness. And even though that's what he made him intend the victim to lose, not only his lineage, but those of his children. But the truth of it is the Adam Zomimim, their children didn't do anything wrong. So we don't, by extension, punish them. And therefore, what it means is that they get the equivalent of lashes. So whenever a reciprocal punishment can't be given of what they intended to do to their victim, we discussed this in 2b, they get lashes as a default. Well, firstly, there are two reasons. The first is when you transgress a negative commandment that's not monetary in nature, it does get the 40 lashes. It's actually 39 minus 1. And then there's a separate transgression for false testimony, at which Adim Zomimim fall almost as a subcategory into that. So what's actually happening here is that we've got this thing that Rabbi Meir said that there are two separate punishments because the transgression occurs for the ninth commandment being broken, as well as the fact that the reciprocal punishment of Adam Zomimim is that in that first case, they wish to cost their victim 200 zuz. So they have to pay it because that reciprocal punishment can be implemented, but because it's not the same one as the pasuk for false testimony, they are also made to suffer lashes. As far as the sages are concerned, that a person isn't liable to both lashes and monetary payment, and we're going to see why. Now, the second case is slightly different, and that of it is that basically it's a case where they wanted this innocent victim to be lashed 39 times. We call it 40, but it's actually 39 times. And therefore, they have to get, according to Rabbi Meir, punished for bearing false witness against your neighbor, which is in Shemot chapter 20, verse 13. So the first set of lashes against each of the Adim Zomimim, they're not shared. Lashes are not shared, is given. And a second set of lashes is given for the transgression of Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 19, and you shall do to him as he planned to do to his brother, which is the general Hazama penalty. Now, the sages say, listen, they only receive one set of 40 lashes each, which goes under the category of their reciprocal punishment, but nothing for transgressing the prohibition against false testimony. So we're going to see why those cases differ slightly. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, let's get straight into it. Now, if you guys don't get it the first time, it's not the end of the world because these ideas are just obviously percolating within you. So the Gemara basically wants to understand the disputants in the first case of the Mishnah. Let's not go to the second case where they intended to cause the victim to have lashes. We're talking at a case where they intended to cost the victim 200 zuz. So if they're two Adim Zomimim, they don't have to each pay 200 zuz. They can share the penalty. Why, guys? We went through this. Anybody?
Is it because they are both responsible for it? I mean, they must be equally responsible for the penalty if they were both involved in trying to falsely accuse someone.
No, because in lashes, why should they're both equally involved, and yet
Oh,
each
lashes.
of them.
You talk about
No,
lashes,
no,
the
no,
one
no,
that
no.
you
I'm
payment.
saying
Oh.
according to your logic, because they're both involved, why don't we make each of them pay 200 zuz? Because in terms of wishing to cause their victim lashes, each of them receives 40 lashes. They don't share it amongst themselves. So I'm asking why the distinction.
Because as a group, they were trying to only extort 200 from the guy, so they only need to pay 200 back. The lash is an exception to the rule.
Uh, okay,
It's
so what I'm trying to find out is the reason why. So I want to explain it a little bit more clearly. When you have when a verdict has been passed, there's no separation between the verdict and the pronouncement of sentence. In a secular court, when a person's been given a guilty charge, there are different factors. I discussed one of those factors is the fact that is it a federal offense or a state offense, or does it cross state boundaries? Or perhaps is it maybe a compounded offense? If it's more than three times, this person is shown to be a habitual criminal, so it's stacked up against him in terms of the charges. If he's what you call a multiple offender. So sentencing depends on the particular circumstances and are separate from a guilty innocent verdict, the severity of the sentence. There's a difference if you walk in and you see your spouse having an affair in a fit of rage, you ventilate both of them with your compact 45 because you were a little bit stressed. Now, the difference is that if you were having an affair with a married woman and wanted to make sure that the husband died an untimely death so you could both enjoy his life assurance policy, the court would find that far more distasteful because that was A, premeditated, and B, it shows that there's a sinister motive that the husband, in fact, didn't do anything wrong, but you creating an affair, you trying to kill him along with the wife, and an innocent person is dying. Whereas here, both the couples are not exactly holding at anything other than Jerry Springer. So the fact of it is, in a fit of rage, one can understand that a person might act impulsively as premeditated with no malice or shock or intent. So therefore, the sentence, although it both results in two parties dead, is going to be a very different sentence, which is different to the verdict of guilty. In the Jewish system, with the Sanhedrin and the Beis Din, sentencing and the verdict is one activity. And therefore, if the Adim Zomimim come before a verdict is given, the case is thrown out of court and they don't get the reciprocal punishment in this world. Don't you worry, Hashem is waiting for them, and 80 years goes very quickly for Hashem. He's going to spend some quality time with you. But certainly in this world, they can't implement it because one doesn't deserve the kapora in this world of reciprocal penalty because they actually got almost firstly, it's not as if they got away with it, but no damage was caused up to the verdict state. After the verdict is given, after sentence is carried out, the reason why they don't get the reciprocal punishment, because we would think the logic to originally was if what they attempted to do is done to them, then surely if they were successfully able to have it implemented, even more so the reciprocal penalty is done to them. And what we say with that is we cannot learn a kal vachomer, which is an obvious, even more so application because there's a spiritual element and that person doesn't deserve mercy by suffering in this world what he intended to do to his victim, and the full punishment will be for him in the next world. And further to which, divinely, that person was meant to suffer that judgment, otherwise the plot would have been foiled. Hashem could have at any time made the Adim Zomimim be contradicted by a second set of witnesses. So one of the things that we brought up here is, what does this have to do with the monetary payment versus the lashes? Is that when the verdict is given, it's, according to some opinions, not a penalty, but compensation, because you did cost the victim money. It happened to be that your timing was shocking. You were caught out, and that in sentencing, it didn't actually get implemented in practicality, but because sentencing and the verdict are the same process, it's as if that person paid. Now, since you sought to cost him 200 zuz, then all he needs as compensation, guys, is 200 zuz. And since that's the case, we can make the Adim Zomimim share the cost. You get what I'm saying. So if it's 300 zuz cost, for example, and there are 3 Adim Zomimim, each one pays 100 zuz. If it's 2, each one would pay 150. Let's take a look at lashes. 40 lashes, it's actually 39. So you have 3 Adim Zomimim, we could say, why don't they share it at 13 lashes each? And the reason being is that they need to feel in full what they intended to do to their victim, because the victim feels no joy at compensation. A Jew generally doesn't get joy out of another Jew suffering. It's different to have compensation when you've actually had a monetary loss, and therefore that amount can be shared. But in no way would it be compensatory to see somebody that plotted against you lashed. I mean, obviously it's a satisfaction that you weren't lashed and justice was carried out, but generally Jews are not vengeful. The reason why they suffer the full result is because it's not compensatory in nature, and therefore is a special edict against corruption with conspiring witnesses, and they can't share it because it's not in lieu of what they owed the defendant, but merely a punishment. Do you see the difference? Guys, any questions so far? Okay. So, Kev, if I had to ask you now, why did the Adam Zomimim not share the lashes, but they share the monetary compensation? How would you word it?
I can't say it over. I was going to say they share the monetary compensation. If it's 200 in total, that someone they try to, then they pay it, but I don't know how to, can't.
Okay, so then that's my fault. I must just put it over in a more simple sentence. It's my fault.
No, you said it would be complicated.
No, but we haven't got to the complicated yet. This is the simple part.
Ah.
So, yeah.
If I can try. So it's basically, it depends on the circumstances.
Okay, that always does. Can you be more specific? That's such a Jewish answer.
So, so each case they must sort of like you said, they must first see what the circumstances is before they can sort of give a judgment or verdict.
No, what I said there was different. I said in secular law, the sentence and the verdict are 2 separate matters, and a lot of other factors in secular law are taken into account. Generally, in halachic law, there are prescribed sentences for particular verdicts. Do you get what I'm saying? There's no such thing as premeditation, for example. In Shemaim there might be, but on a practical level, there's not. And one of the reasons is, if you look at it, is that the rest of the world has become such a vile place that the law has to be very nuanced to take into account all the criminality, because people are not holding at a level where a shavua, an oath, using Hashem's name would frighten anybody. They meant to say to you, swear your hand on the Bible, means nothing to somebody today. In those days, people at the level, they would rather lose money than use Hashem's name in vain. There was an awe and trepidation. And when society has gone to the dogs, you have to have a slightly different system. Otherwise, there'd be anarchy and chaos. What I'm saying is, in the Jewish system, verdict and sentencing is the same. So according to those hold that it's not a penalty, because you must remember, Rabbi Akiva said that he considered it to be a kanas, a penalty which is punitive, because you hadn't actually cost the victim money. He was going to pay, the verdict was against him, but he didn't actually pay. And therefore, since he didn't pay, even though you intended to cost that victim money, Did you cost the victim money as Adam Zimmerman? Yes or no?
Not yet.
No, because the second set of witnesses, in order to get the reciprocal punishment, had to come before sentence was meted out, which means that the money didn't transfer from the defendant to another party, and therefore he didn't actually lose money. He might have been sentenced to lose money.
Let me try to understand this. What you're saying is the money, the money side is if he's being if he's paid it, and the lashes is if he hasn't paid it.
No, I'm not saying that, but that is a point that does
Okay.
come up, that the rabbis do say if he pays, he's not subject to two payments of both money and lashes.
Lashes.
It generally would be the case that Kim Leber di Rabamine, you pay the greater penalty and the lower one is waived, which means probably lashes is worse than paying money. I certainly wouldn't want my back stripped of the skin, so I think I'd be putting in money instead of lashes. But we apparently in this case don't apply Kim Leber di Rabamine, where the harsher part of the pasuk is given, when the reciprocal penalty is the main emphasis, that the lashes are waived in terms of money according to the rabbis. We're going to learn why. What I'm saying here is a different point, and that point is that according to Rabbi Akiva, is that Eidim Zomamim is actually a penalty, because you intended to cost the victim money. A second set of witnesses came and testified. The first set of witnesses weren't in the location that they reported that the cost loss to the other party occurred, and therefore the penalty they intended to do to the victim is done to them. But the money hadn't yet, because sentencing hadn't taken place. That's the only reason why the Eidim Zomamim do pay. If sentencing already took place, you can't prosecute the Eidim Zomamim with the reciprocal penalty. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva uses this as a basis to say it's actually a penalty. Why? It's not compensation. Why? Because the victim, the defender, didn't lose money in actuality. In actuality, he didn't. Do you get it?
Just grief and discomfort from the whole process.
For sure, but he didn't actually lose the money. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva holds that, in fact, it's a penalty. Okay? Lance, with pleasure, you're on mute. Lance, you're on mute. I can hear you talking away. It's probably very insightful, but you're on mute.
Okay, so sorry about that. So if they try to rip him off 500 Rand, therefore the two witnesses or three witnesses together must give 500 Rand. But if they try to cause him pain of 39 lashes, then they must each get 39 lashes. They can't split it, because having only 13 lashes, they would not each of them feel the pain that they wanted to cause onto him.
So that's part of the answer, but it's got a flaw in it. In other words, part of the flaw is that, listen, then each witness that, each Eidim Zomamim or each false testifier should pay the pain at what they intended to cost the victim and feel it in full. No.
It's not a profit-making thing.
No. I'm not saying that. The rest could go technically to the base din. So Lance is bringing up an excellent point. This is not where. That's one of the reasons why it doesn't happen. And Lance brought up a brilliant point. Is the victim, the defendant, is not meant to have his anguish made as a profit center. Lance is completely correct. He's not meant to make profit out of it. And therefore, it suffices what they intended to cost him is done to them, and they can share the load. Okay? Because he shouldn't earn from it. Okay, so Lance is correct. The other view, though, Lance, on the downside, is that each victim, in principle, should feel exactly what they intended to cost to this victim in terms of stress. Because if you wanted to cost your victim R1 million and each one was paying 330 grand, it's a hell of a different stress level. The one person might, it might send him on the street as opposed to just getting a secondary home loan. Do you get what I'm saying? So in principle, if you're using the term of feelings, what should happen with this thing of feelings is they should feel what they intended to do to the victim. But the Gemara is using a slightly different form of logic and saying, look, it's not a profit center, and Lance is 100% correct. So it suffices that the victim get what they intended to cost him. And in fact, it's not compensation. According to Rabbi Akiva, he has profited from it, but the stress he underwent, trust me, it's only fair that he gets it. So it's punitive, but it's only fair. But he's not entitled to earn 3 times the amount. With lashes, because there's no compensation conceptually against what they sought to cost their victim. In other words, if somebody bashes your car and you have your car fixed, you're feeling better. If somebody gets whipped over bashing your car and doesn't have the money, it doesn't make you feel better because you still have to pay. So therefore, they can mitigate the cost because it makes the victim get restitution. But with lashes, they each have to feel it. But that, in a way, you've just got to discern that Rabbi Akiva still sees that as punitive in both measures. Why? Because he views it as a kanas, as a penalty, and not as a mammon compensation. Because Rabbi Akiva said it didn't actually cost the victim money, because sentence wasn't carried out. So it's punitive. Whereas the rabbis say there's no difference between the sentence and the verdict, and therefore when the verdict goes against the victim, it's as if you cost him. You did. It just wasn't carried out. But by law, you cost him. And therefore, restitution is made when they share what they intended to cost him amongst the victims so they can split the payment. And the lashes, there's no joy to the victim, so they each got to know what it feels like. So we don't go with the lone opinion of Rabbi Akiva. We go with the Tanna Kamma, the rabbis, that say it's compensatory in nature, and therefore it suffices that he was compensated for the getting that negative verdict, and he's paid what they sought to cost him. And as far as lashes are concerned, since he feels no joy, it's like having your car bashed and not fixed. It doesn't matter if that guy is thrown in jail or whipped or whatever. You still have to come up with the money. Therefore, they get the full brunt of the penalty regarding that. Does that make sense, guys? So Lance has got a point. It's not a profit center where he has to make 3 times the money. Make sense?
And lashes also don't enable, you can't profit off everybody getting lashes. So
Correct.
That's
exactly the point. That's exactly the point. There's no restitution. It doesn't, you see, it's fine. So that's exactly the point. Certain sins that you do against somebody, if you get lashes, like you transgress a negative commandment, it doesn't make the victim feel any better because he's at a loss of pocket. He would much rather than have a guy lashed, have him pay for the losses he's had. All right, so guys, we're not going to analyze the Gemara today because obviously Lance has a bit on his plate. Arthur's exhausted. And I think we'll start tomorrow. But did I address the issue? Because Kevin has to go in 2 minutes.
very much.
All right, Kev, just one thing quickly. One thing. Just without joining the other idea, because that whole thing with the hostage, whatever, it's controversial at the moment. So I'd love not to be canned off YouTube.
Okay, yeah.
Something else. I mean, you can only imagine.
I haven't got
had some naughty slaps.
I didn't think of anything else besides
Just share
that
an
for
idea of
today.
Musa, something, anything.
Okay. No, I'm going to say something controversial also related to.
Try not to get us kicked off of YouTube. We've worked so hard.
No, I haven't got anything else to add.
I got something to add about the lashes that I learned.
Okay. Teach us.
So basically, if you punish to get lashes, and say you get 39 lashes, and say at your 6th one you soil yourself, then they say they don't give you any more lashes because it's because of the embarrassment, because you've soiled yourself. It's a kind of death. So they stop. They don't give you any more lashes.
Correct. The embarrassment itself creates a certain kapora. So anybody that suffers from constipation is beaten half to death. But I agree with you, Brendan.
I think I can start just before they're about to strike me. I'll just take a quick one and then say
I
sorry,
would
guys. I'm
take
out of
that
here.
drug that they gave me before I had a colonoscopy where it emptied me out.
Just
Yeah.
eat pawpaw the whole day before. Trust me, you won't have an issue.
Yeah. And they always give
Yeah.
you that stuff at night when you've got surgery the next day and you think it's first thing in the morning, but they only book you in for a colonoscopy at 2 p.m. So you spent the whole night awake. So by the time you go in an anesthetic, they don't even have to knock you out. You finished.
Yeah.
You reached your goal body weight. There's hardly anything left of you. And then they charge you a $9,000 co-payment.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a great day. I hope this has been helpful.
Thanks.
Yep.